Not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
Board, any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We are now on to comments from the public. As a reminder, this portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provision of the Brown Act preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per topic. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. And there will be time for agendized items public comment later. So if there's any public comment right now, if you could please use the raise hand feature. And then I'll turn it over to Aaliyah to help us with that.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay, great. This is Selena Way. I'm a parent of a child at Cherry Chase, and SMS as well. I was going over the demographer's report from the last meeting where it was presented, and I noticed that the biggest drop in enrollment was in Cherry Chase and Cumberland, and so I was wondering why those two schools have been excluded from open enrollment this year, considering that those were the schools that had the largest drop this fall. So it would make sense that we would open up enrollment for those schools for the coming year. Last year, I remember there was concern about a drop in Cherry Chase enrollment that year as well. So I'm not really sure why we're not allowing other students from the district to come to our school. So that was my question. And I know you can't answer, but I just wanted to bring that up. If it was a mistake on the enrollment page that we were admitted, then I'd like that fixed. And that's about it. Thanks.
Michelle, what I can do is I can have Jeremy contact Selena to respond after the meeting, if that's okay.
That would be great. Thank you. And Aaliyah, I think when you're speaking, even though it says you were not muted, we're not hearing you. I cannot hear you. Is there more public comment or just that one? Just the one. Okay. Thank you. Oh, don't need to unmute myself or mute myself. All right, we are now on to item 4A. It's review and discussion, the in-person instruction implementation update. And I think we're turning it over to you, Dr. Gallagher, correct?
Yes, and then I'm going to quickly turn it over to Jeremy Nishihara, who will display the presentation. And our intention here is to go over some information and then to invite questions, of course, so that we're thorough in our response and everyone knows what our plans are moving forward. So go ahead, Mr. Nishihara.
Excellent. Good evening. Can everyone see that? Excellent. All right. Yes, as Dr. Gallagher stated, this is a kind of an update on our in-person instruction implementation. As just a bit of background, we have approved our elementary return in-person model. And then at our last board meeting, we received a pretty thorough update on our progress with middle school. And so this is an opportunity for us to update you and hear your questions about how we're implementing those plans to date. I apologize, this presentation is a little just text heavy, and it's just because there's been a lot of information going on in the planning in the background. And so wanted to just have that opportunity to kind of walk us through the main points of our implementation plans. And I should state also that my name was on the front page to be the main presenter, but this represents a lot, a huge amount, let's just say, of work over even the past 7 to 8 weeks of since we finalized kind of the elementary model and then been working on the middle school models to date, including our implementation of our supervised learning groups. I am not including the 2 weeks of Christmas holiday because we were instructed to take those off. So, okay. So our current status right now, I'll start off with our supervised learning groups. We started this concept, I want to say at the kind of near the beginning of November, and I am pleased to report that we have 10 up and running. So every school site has their first SLG up and running, supporting a snapshot of today of 109 students. This number does fluctuate up and down, just given the fact that we are engaging students who would need assistance in accessing our virtual program. But every school site has theirs up and running. 7 of them are full day, 3 of them are half day. And so we are still working with the sites as we have completed our first round. Some sites are actually looking at the demand would necessitate a second half day, if that makes any sense, or their priority would be to get all 10 to full day. So I guess I bring that up is that we're taking a differentiated approach at each site, allowing them to contact their parents, kind of hear the feedback of where their parent and guardians are about returning the students to the supervised learning groups, and then kind of work from there. So and making sure that we are addressing the need as we hire on staff and identify staff to then fill the supervised learning groups. So each individual school site has done a lot of work in outreach, and I know that was a main interest of the board, is making sure that we are communicating and contacting our parent and guardians of those students in need. And I do again want to give the administrators and the front office staff and the outreach coordinators a lot of credit, because a lot of times they have to cycle through the lists and really communicate exactly what a supervised learning group is. Explain the protocols and procedures that are involved, because again, each student needs to complete a screener before coming on, the COVID screener. They still do practice social distancing, masks are a thing, etc. So there's been a lot of communication going out, and sometimes it does take 2 or 3 rounds, of calling for the parents to be accepting. It was noted in some of the questions for this preparation is that right now, the number one issue facing the return overall of students who are offered a spot in the supervised learning group is kind of concerns right now, again, about the COVID-19 caseload, and just, they're not feeling super comfortable yet regarding the protocol. So again, the school sites circle back periodically and check in with them to give them explain more, let them know then now maybe the supervised learning group has been up and operational for 3 weeks, and to give them that opportunity. So they are circling back, but that is a concern out there that needs to be addressed, and we are addressing that with information given our safety protocols, but it does take a little bit of time. So I'm thinking it'd probably be best to take questions after each little section, if that's okay, because they are kind of these distinct areas. So if that works for you, Michelle, I will kind of pause here on the supervised learning group update.
Board, is there any questions on this specific area? And just go ahead and speak, since I can't see everyone on the
I don't have a question, I have a comment. Isabel and I went out with Mike today and saw the 2 at the 2 middle schools, and that was, I just want to say that I think that we're really getting it down. It seems like applying it to, even though every site has a different way of doing them, you can really see we're learning as we go. And the ones I saw today looked really comfortable, secure, well thought out, and it was humming. Those kids were working. So I really hope we can really fully utilize them. Isabel, you have to say something. She can't see you.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. I also wanted to say that the student learning groups look very, very comfortable, and I saw the space where the kids are is kudos for how you guys are working that the district. And yeah, the fact that you know, it's spotty that maybe some kids just stop coming, and I don't know, maybe we could check if we can help with that, if it's transportation or something. Maybe there is a way to help, because yeah, from both sides I noticed that I was told that some kids just stopped coming for one reason or another, and they were a little bit more space. So I don't know, maybe something that we can help, maybe no, maybe it's just life as it is, but I don't know, if maybe something that is easily fixable.
And Isabel, I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that's the a better way of saying what I was trying to say, is that it's if it works for that family for that 2 weeks and then a circumstance changes, the schools are being responsive to that. And I do want to acknowledge Tasha's team, because you know, the full day, it does take a lot of endurance to then go kind of from, you know, what the fall was, and if a student is now in school and on campus now for 6 hours, you know, so the sites are really good at kind of supporting that SEL side of it as well, including making it a comfortable environment as much as we can. So I'm glad you brought that up. So.
Go get a copy.
Excellent. Nancy, Michelle, if you don't mind, I could see because I have my second screen up. So if you don't mind, I can.
Sounds great.
Member Newkirk.
Yes. So are we inviting any kind of thought process around expanding the supervised learning groups with a wraparound that would equivocate longer supervised time, such that parents could have a typical full work day, because we want to minimize the amount of cohorts that our students are engaging in. Do sites have wraparounds with agreements already with their with on-site childcare, or is this something that we're exploring as the interest and need for supervised learning groups may increase?
So I think I'll answer that 2 ways, and then I can let Tasha jump in if she wants to. Our priority right now is that second round of SLGs to create capacity. And again, I think getting the wraparound, or, you know, the extended service would be the next evolution of what we would then start to the next step. And so I don't think we have anything in place per se. Again, our interest is getting that second round up for those school sites and get more students in, but that's definitely a possibility. Dr. Dean, anything else you want to add on that?
Yes, that's the main thing. And then we have to look at staffing, the right staffing and schedules. And so, you know, looking at it too, we could extend the day for the students that are there, but if we could get more students on, I think that's where our first level of responsibility is. And then if we can add more, we will attempt to do that as well.
Excellent. All right.
I didn't hear the answer about transportation though. Like, what's the thought on that? Is the update?
Okay, Tasha, I didn't know if you were going to jump in. I was just going to say.
I will. The way the sites have been working through that is, if it can be a part of our district transportation, then we're doing that. But if we have unique special circumstances, they're reaching out to us, and we're looking at that through our student services transportation, where we have particular vendors that we work with. And we do have 1 or 2 cases that are utilizing that support. So we deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Tasha, just as quick follow-up, is what you're talking about just for students who are in special ed, or that would apply for any students? The transportation.
It would apply to, I would say, any students in our SLGs.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be a part of our student services side of supports.
What does SLG stand for?
Learning groups.
Oh, supervised learning group.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I thought, wait, is this a new one? Yeah, okay.
No, not same ones.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tasha. If there's no other question, and again, we can circle back because we have next steps also at the end. So I'm gonna move on, if that's okay, talking about the elementary in person. As you recall, we had the model presented and actually a number of parent forums through November and December. And so since early December, we had launched the Parent Guardian Preference Survey update. And so I'm going to re-give you the initial snapshot of our data, the snapshot of returning as of the last day of when the survey closed. And but we did continue outreach. I want to make that very clear that we didn't just say, oh, okay, the survey's done. So, but this is just a great point to start. 46% of parent and guardians indicated their preference to remain virtual. 25% said remain with the teacher. That was a pretty strong draw. 16% said in person. And then the pending at that time was 13%. And so again, a big credit to the school sites for their continued outreach, even after the first week of December when the survey officially shut down. They continued to follow up with the community and calls, and it was able to find out that the majority of that 13% didn't respond because we had stated that the default, if you didn't respond, was virtual. There was a small percentage that said, "Oh yeah, sorry, I would like in person," but that was a pretty small percent, and then an even smaller percent was we became aware then that those families had actually moved out of the district. So the reason I wanted to kind of just bring that up is there was an overwhelming draw to remain with the teacher was 25% again. Virtual was remain 46, and that actually I think went up to maybe over 50% after it was all said and done, because again of the default to go back to virtual, and then the in-person. And so that was kind of our starting point, was the parent and guardian preference survey. So then we had our next step of through the second and third week of December was to then take the workforce readiness of our classified and certificated staffing and then start to try to match those two together. And so prior to break, we had kind of a framework in place, but then we were able to come back a week ago or on the 4th of January and finally kind of put the framework around grades TK, K, and 1. And so I wanted to just give a quick update on that. I think I shared in our reopening advisory task force and in a prior meeting that the TK grade level, as it came back, our recommendation or our planning now is to remain all 5 of our TK classes in virtual settings. We had roughly 17 students out of the 109 requests the in-person. However, if you recall, our TK structure is that they're set up across 5 sites. And so literally it was 2 or 4 or 3 from each site that would requested the in-person. So we would have had to disrupt the entire TK program. In addition, we had trouble identifying which site would be the primary one in person, and then we would have to have transportation and driving across town. And so at this time, we've made the recommendation, or the planning is to remain the 5 TK sites in virtual, but that's not to say that the school sites haven't continued to have those conversations with potentially with those in-person, those handful of students requesting TK in person. Our planning process, if you recall, was not taking a district-wide view, because that would put basically everyone in one bucket, and then we would kind of disrupt the entire apple cart. What we did is we focused on each school site and allowing them to take their numbers and meet the needs of their community as per the parent and guardian survey. And I don't know how to word this other than that paid huge dividends for us in allowing us to have the flexibility and allowing each site to look a little bit different. So I should also mention now, again, this was this process was through a huge collaboration and ongoing communication with our our teacher association. So really want to give them credit for kind of being open and collaborative in this process, representing their members well with the impacts and holding us to task on that, which was very important, but also understanding that our ultimate goal was to meet the needs of the students not accessing our virtual program. So I'm going to give you 3 flavors. I guess I'm hungry from dinner. 3 flavors of how the schools come out. And again, I'm being a little hesitant on just saying, oh, this is how Bishop's going to look, or, because we're getting ready to put together the communication portion of this. But given the fact that we're still sitting in purple for the moment, we want to just be conscious of not telegraphing too far ahead, because then that raises certain anxiety. So I appreciate the fact that we're trying to thread this walk this narrow path. So we'll call it school site A. They had 19 students in 19 students within their K and their one first grade class that wanted in person. So the numbers worked out. We had a staff member identified who had prior experience in first and K, who actually was teaching current K, but then also had experience in first grade. So their solution to meet the K and first grade scenario was to form a combo class. And it's a clean combo. And again, Mala's probably rolling her eyes because there's no such thing as clean. But in this case, the K cohort is in the AM. So it's a K cohort in the morning and then the first grade in the PM section. So that way it is really, that's how the combo class could work. The other K and the first grade classes were able to remain virtual with their teacher. So looking at that, we were upwards of meeting, I want to say 85% of the parent guardians across that grade level for that school. So I'm giving us all a thumbs up. So that's flavor A. Flavor B is another school site. They were able to, they had 16 parent and guardians with indicating they wanted students to return in person for their kindergarten. And so they were able to keep one full in-person kindergarten cohort. So they would have an AM, PM, and it's all K. But their first grade in-person interest after they did follow-up, they actually became more intrigued with the full day SLG. So in that case, they were able to, and they're one of the schools that we're prioritizing to get the second SLG up so that we can accommodate with their returning in-person plan. But in that case, we were meeting 99.9% of what everybody's interests were in that case. And so there would be just the one K in-person hybrid, and then the remaining sections would be virtual with another SLG, and that meets everybody's need, the full day SLG. So you can see how each school looked very different, and we had enough parts, if you will, to then be able to meet that need. And then school C is what we were hoping for, is an example where there was enough students to fill one K section and enough students request to do one first grade section. So there is, in this case, one in-person offering per grade level at those school sites. When that happens, though, the disruption, I shouldn't use that word. The reorganization of the classes does come down a little bit, where then now we're holding steady around 70% of the students in those grade levels, if that makes any sense. But all of this is we were able to reconfigure and then stay within the confines of our contract, the class size as well, and trying to maintain balance with the in-person versus the virtual. So that's kind of, and when it came, I know your next question, or maybe one of your next questions would be, how did we identify the teacher? And again, this is one of the impacts that we negotiated with SCA. So it starts off with the student preference because the numbers drive kind of the section offerings. Then we used the staff's workforce readiness survey, then volunteer, then prior experience in that grade level. And then also we built in the fact that we fall back. We have some pretty thorough transfer language within the contract. So we had those layers, which I think was very important to understand from staff. So they understand, why they were selected, and they have the choice for, or the offerings for that in-person section. Okay, so that's the elementary in person. So how about I do this, Michelle? I will shut off my screen share now so that you can see everybody, and then we can have any questions about this aspect of it.
All right, board, any questions? Jeremy, I have a question, and then we'll go to Nancy after that. Have the teachers for the kinder and first, even though it's not happening yet, have the teachers who would get shuffled or come in, have they been contacted? Like, are people aware, or we're not doing that yet until we get closer to the possibility?
Oh, yes, great question. Those conversations are ongoing, and so we're just making sure the numbers have been balancing. So I want to say we've heard from at least 6 of the sites, and so the other conversations should be scheduled, and they should be done now. And HR has been there. Mary Beth's done a great job of kind of working with the principals to make sure that we're answering their questions about even that priority list. But yeah, we are definitely in progress of that. So from the teacher standpoint.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Nancy?
Testing of staff. Will staff be tested before they start? And I was also on a CSBA Zoom meeting, and the county is concerned that there might not be enough demand for their static testing site. And so they are also encouraging staff from all districts to utilize the county office of ed for a testing site as well.
When you can get your spouse an appointment as well, I think they said.
Yes.
Excellent. So
Family members.
testing and the symptom screener it was a little bit later on the update, but I think at this time, you know, we have the agreements built in where we're trying to get the on-site, at least bi-weekly testing program. And so definitely would have that in place. It's not a prerequisite. The testing wouldn't be a prerequisite for them to return. We are saying on-site, staff returning to on-site would be subject to the mandatory testing. I want to be very explicit that we're not saying vaccinations, because that's also come up in the same sentence. So we're talking mandatory on-site testing of COVID symptoms. And then in addition, staff reporting to site would have to complete the screener. And so I would want to say we try, but just trying to make sure that it wouldn't be a prerequisite to test everybody before they came back, just because that would be that snapshot in time. So.
Right. Got it.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Excellent. All right. There we go. Okay. Middle school in person. This should be relatively fresh in your mind because we had a pretty in-depth presentation from the instruction department last time on the middle school returning in person model. Just for the members of the audience who weren't in attendance, we are focusing on 6th grade and students that are not able to access the virtual program. And so they are, I don't want to say behind's the wrong word. They were waiting for SCA and us to reach agreement, which we did last Friday. So I want to give a huge shout out to the instruction department and the middle school task force teams for getting us to that point. And so they are actually having the staffing conversations concurrently with the elementaries right now, because again, there's 2 cohorts of 6th grade for SMS identified and 1 for CMS. So we're looking at roughly 6 or 7 staff members. And they're engaging immediately with their planning of the 6th grade cohorts, because even though they have the students identified, they're doing their master schedule magic. And so that they're literally working on that as we speak right now. And so again, a lot of discussion went into the presentation last time. So if you have any questions on that, I can take that now. So that wasn't very much, a lot of that was covered last time. So.
Board, is there any questions about the middle school?
Oh, I think the last time we talked about that you were looking at afternoon supports for the students. I don't know if you've made anything new. It's so recent. Like I feel like we just had the meeting about it. So I mean, I know everyone's working, but if you've got any ideas around that.
I do, and again, you're stealing a little bit of my thunder for next steps, but that's okay. This is it's an exciting topic to talk about. No, so we had a chance to bring this up with both CMS and SMS administration about given the AM model, and then so for PM, so CMS is looking at their morals program as a way to bridge from the after the morning in person to have supervision throughout the rest of the day. In addition, for both schools, an option could be just a PM SLG for those students that are needing. But then they are going to, circle back with their student cohorts to really make the demand, because that is something we're learning, is just making sure that we're responsive to exactly what they need. But no, as soon as that topic was brought up and the interest of the board was expressed, we kind of put that on the radar. So they are definitely building that in that planning. So.
Any other questions? All right.
If you don't mind, and so for the audience, the slides are very boring with bullets, so I'm just going to read them, and that way I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So the next one is the middle school after school enrichment. So this tacks on a little bit of what you were just saying, Bridget. Is we have both CMS and SMS with voluntary staff members kind of gearing themselves up to be able to offer kind of an after-school enrichment activity. We're using the fact that there's an absence of after-school sports concept. So if a staff member had an interest in, say, archery or outdoor chess, I don't know if there's actually having like live people using chat, who knows? But we have those in planning process. We did put a hold on that till February 1, just given our planning. We wanted the middle schools to be able to have time to focus on the cohorts. In addition, not the worst thing to kind of let the school year get us back, from returning in January 4th. So those are being developed and we'll be launching on February 1st, and to offer some optional after-school enrichment activities for middle school students. And again, if they have an idea, they're vetting it through their administration. It is voluntary, outdoors, a couple times a week, just to and I believe Miss Ballantyne mentioned last time she's excited. Her daughter is excited about archery, so a little scary. All right. We did cover this actually throughout our entire planning process. Special education is something we really need to make sure that we're keeping tabs on. The students, Tasha's team, and the SDC teachers and the psychologists and all the service providers have been reaching out during Purple to make sure we identify and get the parent and guardian preference, if you will, for their IEP services. And so that data has just been collected, and now we're trying to figure out the best pathway forward to individually meet those students' needs while we're in Purple. The returning in-person planning for SDCs was included with the elementary planning process, so we're good to go. We know what to do when we return in the returning in-person. It's just really this challenge of trying to meet the needs of not relaxed guidelines regarding IEPs and services. And so just again, a credit to Tasha's department for having inflexible, guidelines and requirements, and then really trying to meet the needs of our individual students. So we continue to try to find, voluntary staff to meet those needs right now. And again, it really does help to have that individualized information of what each student and the parent and guardian's comfort level for potential returning during Purple for those services. So Tasha, I didn't know if you wanted to, I kind of rambled on a little bit about that, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, that was great, Jeremy. Yeah, it is a challenge because you have multiple buckets and lots of variability within that. But what is not variable is the compliance and responsibilities we have with regards to federal compliance and guidelines with IDEA. So it does make a bit of an interesting dynamic, but I think we're navigating well. The team has done well and worked really hard to talk to everyone, talk to every teacher. So I think we have the data we need now. It's just a matter of getting the teaching and staff force to implement the plans that we have on paper.
I'll pause here for questions on I guess, middle school, after school enrichment, and special education. Sorry, I kind of rolled through.
So for the middle school 6th grade cohorts, the in-person, just from going to the SLG today, the administrator who was taking us around mentioned that some of the kids who weren't attending, for some of the reasons they were finding a hard time getting to the campus, and so I'm sure they'll be reaching out to Tasha or whoever to see about a special exception. But what about for the cohort thing? Is it going to be the same thing, or are you planning to, if it's like really, if these are the kids who aren't responding and it's really hard to attract them, is there anything different that you're thinking of for that? Or are you thinking it's just going to continue to be a case-by-case basis?
Are you talking about the supervised learning group, or?
I'm talking about the 6th grade middle school expansion, which is really for 6th graders who also aren't accessing, and particularly at schools that aren't on the route, like the schools on the south side of town are not on the route, whatever the route is.
Yeah, I think I think case by case, I think, because that's important in the fact that the school sites are starting that out, or being able to outreach directly to the parents. we are aware of the middle school transportation issue as a whole, just given the fact that the students have a wider attendance area to be coming from. So yeah, again, the SMS example, I believe, was, students for their SLG needing to come out of the Ellis attendance area. So we are aware of that and just really trying to track down that individualized data. The reason I bring that up is that transportation was, again, I believe, a distant second compared to the barrier for SLGs being the COVID-19 concerns. But it is something definitely we want to try to address. And I think Tasha mentioned that we have a case-by-case basis, so it could be district transportation or other. And so yeah, we're working with the school sites to identify and making sure that they get there, because sometimes that is unfortunately one of several other barriers that might need to be addressed. And again, that's why we're there. The school sites are really taking the time to drill down. So
Okay, thanks.
Any other
excellent.
questions?
And I guess I would just add a couple things. You made me think of this, Bridget. I attended a meeting that the county office put on with a pediatrician from Stanford. I guess that was last week. And during that meeting, that particular doctor was sharing lots of data about the safety of in-person instruction. And the premise is that in schools where there's consistent, thorough following of established protocols, of the recognized protocols, there is little to none transmission. And so, I left that meeting thinking, yeah, I've heard this a lot. I'm convinced, but the people that we really need to convince are the families, right? And so, and we've given them permission to make their choice at this point. But as we move through, certainly the spring into the summer, where we're really going to try to have a robust in-person experience for families, and then into next August, I think we're going to have to do some of the work of the county health department, or communicate their work about the safety of in-person instruction, because you can see it in the survey and every level that Jeremy's been going through, like that's the barrier, just concern, which is understandable. The other thing I would say is, I'm sure you've heard about two things, and the meetings that I've heard about this, they've made sure that we separate them. One is the governor's proposal, the governor's plan, or the governor's proposal for grants for schools and districts that return for in-person. And the underscore on that is that it's a proposal at this point. He talked about February 1st. The meeting I was in yesterday underscored the fact that they're not even going to have a hearing on it until sometime next week. So like the timelines already don't work for that. But some portion of that may be implemented. So there's that. And then the second part is a new set of sort of consolidated guidelines that allow, for example, eliminates the concept of a waiver, replaces it with schools being able to open if the county case count is at 25 per 100,000, or I think that's the number. So it's a different dynamic. At this point, none of that interferes with our plans, our negotiated plans with our employee associations, because there's no requirement that we return when our case rate falls to that lower level. And it's in our county, it's not there yet. So that's a long way of saying none of that interferes with our plans. We're going to work on the requirements of putting together the documents that are necessary, really, again, consolidating our plans and posting them, because that's part of the requirement for opening schools. So we're going to have that ready for when, hopefully soon, our schools are able to open in the red tier. I don't know if that all made sense or not.
All right, any other questions before we go on?
Well, I was wondering if Jeremy, you were going to say something about vaccination or no?
That's kind of on the last, yeah, that's kind of our next step piece, I think, or no. Actually, we might as well address that next. That's a good segue. Thank you, Bridget. COVID-19 safety protocols in place. On-site COVID-19 testing, Nancy kind of alluded to that. We are, again, very grateful for our partnership with El Camino Hospital. Since September, we've had over 500 staff members avail themselves of testing at 8 different testing pieces. And we're going to continue that because, again, since we're not back yet, we are exploring other testing opportunities. So, when we were trying to plan for ironically, today was that day, if you recall, right? That's not lost on me that we're having this presentation on that day of potentially of our return. That at the time, curative was like the only option we had for PCR testing through the county. There's with everything, as more information comes out, there's pros and cons for each process. And so we are taking this time to be able to leverage our El Camino Hospital. So we have our testing program in place, but then explore a couple other options of opportunities for us to be able to offer on-site testing for our staff. And so Valencia Labs is another PCR option that the county is having. And then we are exploring the use of an Abbott rapid test on site, which is a Binex test. And I am not an expert in this by no means, but it's just, these are the terms that I'm starting to deal with on a daily basis. And so we're working with Tasha and the nurse team to kind of evaluate the best one. The one advantage of the Abbott lab intrigues us is that it gives results in 15 minutes. And so instead of the curative or even the Valencia Labs has a 24-hour to 48-hour turnaround period. So long way of saying we're not lollygagging and just waiting. We're using this time to be able to explore other options, to be able to put in a good model that could last us into, if necessary, into summer school or beyond. So that's on-site COVID-19 testing update. The student symptom screener, that's something that's coming into play by the end of January. Just briefly on this, we've had a staff symptom screener as per guidelines in place since the start of the year, back in August. But as we entertained returning in person, we needed an application that would scale. So we ended up selecting a product called Ruvna. It's a third-party provider that integrates with PowerSchool. And that was important for us because if hypothetically at that school B I gave you with the one cohort that's returning in person, once we reconfigure that class in PowerSchool, that class would be reflected in Ruvna, so that all parents wouldn't be able to need to be bothered. In addition, it does have an ad hoc tool that allows us to then have the SLGs be what is that called? Created on the fly in order for them to have a digital solution. There was a concern, what's the screener being used right now for the SLGs? They're using a daily paper screener. And so this model in the next week and a half would take over for that unless somebody doesn't have internet access. So then they could still rely on that paper screener process, because that is a very important checkpoint for you to be, for staff and students, like, how do I feel today before I go in? Because that's one of our first lines of defense when it comes to the layers of safety for our safety protocols. So that was a long way of saying Ruvna is coming online, and staff will also start utilizing that because it's just kind of all in one system. The last thing is we are keeping up to date with Cal OSHA requirements, and I think it's 8685 reporting. So as you know, we have our COVID-19 dashboard on our website. We keep that up to date on a weekly basis. And just wanted to give a huge shout out to Mary Beth Allman. She is our COVID-19 designee. On a daily basis is kind of keeping tabs on things and attending weekly meetings with things keep shifting and changing, and simultaneously offering some great PD to our staff. So again, we are in compliance with our reporting and trying to actually even going that extra step of posting that information on our website regarding any positive cases for staff on site or students on site, and then the fact that we've then followed the protocol about contact tracing and notification. I think that, so that was vaccines. Thank you, Bridget. We don't have a lot of information about that. I am going to talk a little bit and then let Dr. Gallagher, if he has any updated information. That is high level of anxiety for everybody wanting to know when and where this is coming. We're getting some, mixed communications that the state is rolling things out, that we are in tier 1A or 1B, but the bottom line is we are in constant communication, and I mean constant, with our school insurance group because they are our link to our health providers, so United Health and Kaiser. In addition, maybe every other week or so, we happen to just bug El Camino Hospital to see what resources they may have for us. In addition, we are also trying to work with our SIG because the school insurance group about any kind of things from the healthcare provider side. And then Mike gets any updates from his EOC weekly meeting. So Mike, I don't know what you're hearing from. What are you hearing, Dr. Gallagher?
So a week ago, I heard from Marianne Dewan that the state would be starting, expected to be starting educators, so group 1B or tier 1B, whatever they're calling it, by the end of January. Then that was the last I heard from her. And then the next day I heard that the state was moving their target from everyone 75 and over to everyone 65 and over. And I did math in my head and said, I think that just pushed us back. That's not based on anything other than I see you're nodding your heads. That sounds like the same. In the meantime, I'm hearing sort of anecdotal evidence of educators who, by hook or crook, have been able to, get an appointment. Not immediately, but get appointments from different providers for vaccines. So I don't know, I guess is my answer. But what we did hear from the county, Marianne showed a chart that the county has provided about who in the county is responsible for administering vaccinations for different groups. So for example, the pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens, I think it was, are responsible for long-term care facilities. Like they've got that. Groups like teachers or school employees would be administered by their Kaiser or your PAMP or whoever their provider is, because the idea is that almost all of them are insured, and those organizations have the ability and the means and the setup to be able to administer the vaccines and like send out the reminders, all that kind of stuff. And then the county health department would fill in gaps after that. So for example, we shared some of this information in our staff development day on Monday. And one of the questions that came through was, I'm a school employee, but I don't happen to have insurance through the district. So where would I go? And in that case, my understanding based on that chart would be that person would get assistance through the county health department. Again, this is all news and information that's a week old, so it's a little stale already, but that's the latest I've heard. It does make sense to me that, for example, for me as a Kaiser member, that I would go to Kaiser, like somehow that just makes sense to me logistically. But we'll see on the timing. That's everything I know.
And so, yeah, we covered this information at the staff development day this past Tuesday, and it is obviously a high interest in everyone. So we'll pass along that information to the board and their employees as it becomes known to us, because that's the new thing. So, all right. So then my last slide, I will project again, if that's okay, just again for the audience's benefits. Our next steps, we covered a couple of these already. So for the elementary level, we are continuing our expansion of SLGs. And then, we have TK, K, and 1 kind of almost completed. And so I plan additional grade levels would be our next step. I put second grade on here, and I know Dr. Gallagher said, we have to take the governor's proposal, but within there was one concrete piece of evidence that did say grades, TK to 2. So we want to make sure that we're at least kind of trying to adhere to that. So we'll start planning for at least second grade and preparation as our next step, not immediately, but just our next step. And then there should be a we're planning parent outreach, a coordinated effort. Again, once we start to get closer, we know, to the red tier, so that there's an orderly rollout of information. But again, we're really trying to balance the timing of that, so we don't go too early and raise everyone's anxiety, or there is a Goldilocks, just right kind of thing we're shooting for. That was a porridge reference. Yes, sorry. Middle school, we're continuing the expansions of their SLGs as well. We'll be bringing to you the for approval the middle school in-person MOU, including the two sample models that were presented at our last board meeting. They are planning for their parent outreach because then their model is flipped, where they would be directly communicating and targeting their outreach to the 6th grade students that they would be bringing back. And again, they assured us too that it's not a one call, and they're going to keep kind of encouraging the parents to take advantage of this opportunity, just because that's kind of our thesis of our plan, is to assist those students that are not accessing the virtual program. And then I think we talked about this a little bit already, identifying additional support. So that could be the afternoon support model, additional after-school enrichment programs, especially at the middle school, just given that fact that our in-person return focuses on 6th grade. And so with that is our implementation update plan as of today, January 21st. And things are moving so fast, and the school sites are doing a lot of heavy lifting, that as soon as that sentence left my mouth, it's already starting to age. So any other questions? And I appreciate your time and focus today. So
Thanks, Jeremy. Board, is there any other additional questions? Nancy?
Has there been clarity, and this is probably more for Mike, about who's providing PPE? The plan that was rolled out had some very specifics about what kind of PPE was needed for each level of interaction with students. Have you heard anything more from Mary Ann with regards to that particular guidance or access of PPE?
So the county, through the state, provided us with a large stockpile of masks and other materials months ago, like early in the school year. So we still have that stockpile. I haven't heard any more news that they were going to be replenishing that, but at this point, that's more than sufficient for probably to get us to the end of the year. That's the latest I have on that. And then I think it would be our responsibility moving forward.
Okay.
As we move into summer and spring and fall.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else, board? All right, thank you, Jeremy, for the presentation, but I know there's also lots of people working behind the scenes putting that all together. So thank you very much. My only just kind of quick comment, and it's probably something you're already working on since it's what we talked about last time too, but if we could just keep brainstorming, it sounds like people feeling concerned is the greatest barrier, right? So if we can just keep figuring out what are things that we can do to help, help appease them. Can we get in? I don't know, right? But if we could just keep, which I'm sure you're probably planning on it and brainstorming, but that would just be my encouragement. Let's keep trying to figure out if there's ways to help them feel more safe about it, because we really are. We're following the protocols, right? We are doing it safe. So if we can help people feel that, right, that would be fantastic. So thank you.
And I agree. I think the track record will speak for itself, which is why the transparency of us putting the dashboard up is all part of that, in service of that. So yeah, definitely we will continue to do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, public, is there any comments on this presentation agenda item before we move on? If there is, please use the raise hand feature now. And I'll turn it over to Aaliyah. We're still not hearing you, Aaliyah.
I can do it. Zuzel Vera Pacheco. You can go ahead and speak.
Okay, now I can speak. Cool. So I just wanted to mention, because it was mentioned that you guys don't want to share the class assignments because you think that will make it stressful. But I just wanted to mention that as parents, we feel the need to have a plan made for our kids to support whatever happens. So having it early results make us be able to know that we can support either be a PM session or AM session or just keeping in virtual, which might just be easier, but I don't know. So I mean, don't think that's not actually, that might be a better idea. I don't know if that's only me that I want to have a long plan, but that's a possibility that other parents feel like it's better to know earlier. That's it.
Thank you. And that makes sense. I'm sure it's not only you. I'm sure all parents want to be able to plan. So I appreciate that. Thank you. The next one is Lupe Escareño.
Hi, my son, he is in third grade with Miss Zhao. His name is Hector. So I just had a question. I came really late in the presentation. I'm confused. So is the school not going to be opening soon, or are you guys anticipating it's still opening in February for the third graders? I'm sorry, I came really late. I wasn't sure about that. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Jeremy or Mike, could one of you give her kind of a quick summary or timeline?
Yes, I can. So Lupe, the plan is once the county goes into the red tier, we will then notify everyone, so teachers, school staff, and start a 2-week clock. And then the plan is within 2 weeks of that, that's when the first day of in-person instruction would begin. So right now, we're still in the purple tier. The good news is that you've probably heard statewide, things have kind of leveled off and started to move in a more positive direction. That's true in our county as well. We're still in a pretty severe situation, but at least it's getting better. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long until we're into the red tier so we can say, let's go. And then 2 weeks from then, that's 2 weeks of planning. And then we're able to implement the in-person plan.
Dr. Gallagher, but third grade doesn't start right away, correct? So.
Oh, that's right. So they would wait. What's the transition for that, Jeremy?
It's roughly 2 weeks, again, depending on when the clock starts. Second and third grade cohort would be 2 weeks after the return of the K and the 1 cohort. So
that's the estimated time. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And again, the reason for that is just to allow the school sites to make sure that they get all the protocols in place for each cohort as safely as when they come back. So
thank you. All right, is there any more public comment? That was it? Okay, thank you. And thank you for those who shared. All right, we are on to item 5, the consent agenda. If there's any public comments on consent agenda, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, I'm not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Board, any comments on consent agenda?
A teeny tiny question on can I ask about a Walden West item? Because the foundation was asking, I saw the email went back and forth. There's an updated version for the last page. The foundation was interested in knowing why SMS had a 4-day visit and CMS had a 5-day, like the middle schools had different days. So is that just a calendaring issue for their schedule, or, you know, is it some innocent, like, is there any reason why it's different? Just because if they're thinking about helping in some way.
I'll definitely follow up on that, but it is, and the number of classrooms that SMS has, as you can see, they're broken up over several different weeks. And they were trying to fit it into their tutorial. So Wednesdays was an issue for them for that reason. And that's why they chose it the way they did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We're now on to item 6, public comments on closed session items. So if any public wishes to speak on any closed session items, please use the raise hand feature now.
I don't see any.
All right, thank you. We are going to convene to closed session where we're going to talk about public employee performance evaluation, superintendent, and it will be a bit of time. So for those who we don't see when we come back, thank you for joining us tonight. And board, are we good going straight into closed session? And then maybe we'll do a break after that. Does that work?
Could we take like just a
Do a break now?
3-minute break now, and then we'd probably be okay the rest of the time?
Okay, so let's try to meet up about 8:04, 8:05, 8:06 in closed session.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Is Sabrina and Monica still around? Because I was going to let you guys know that board say you guys go ahead and go, and we won't need you for the rest of it. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Buenas noches. Descansen. Bye-bye.
Jesus, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just wanted to say goodbye. Brina just texted me because I missed your conversation, so I wasn't aware that we're done. Okay,
Yes,
good.
no problem. Thank you very much
Yay.
again. Buenas noches. All
Buenas
right.
noches. This was probably the
Yes,
shortest
microphone's
one.
about right now, so
Okay.
just wave at you.
Okay, you know, I was getting ready for the equity discussion. I was like getting my glossary and my words and all judicious.
Yeah,
Oh
but
well.
they're going to be in closed session for a while, so yeah, she said thank you very much.
Okay, then it's fine. All
Yep.
right.
Thank you again. Till next time.
Absolutely. Until next time. Hi. Bye.
Want to test it? I can't hear you. No. Nothing. Can you hear me? Okay. I can't hear you. No. I think I need a new laptop.
They're still working on letting me start my video. Yay. So I'm so sick of that picture. I'm like, God, that doesn't, I look totally different now. I gotta change that picture. It's like can't, old photo. Weird.
Just use the logo like I do.
Yeah, I have to figure out how to do that. You know, it's set up through my other account, and
I remember how to do it. Like I was gonna change it or something, and I don't even know how to do it anymore.
All right, so even though you can't see me, I'm just gonna go ahead and start if we're okay with that. So we are reconvening to open session at 9:17. In closed session, we discussed public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent. No action was taken. And we are now on to the review and discussion, equity discussion. And I will turn it, oh, okay, I didn't realize I had to push start video. There we go. I'll turn the time over to Jeff. I just want to start off to say thank you, Jeff, for one, sharing out this kind of deeper stuff and also being willing to lead this discussion. I know that, right, these are tricky things. So thank you, Jeff. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I hope everyone had the chance to read over it. I know it's a little longer than most of the other things that we've had in the past, but like I was saying when I introduced the topic, I think I found it very interesting and very timely. And I think it seems like every month, it seems like there's more reason for looking at the topic. And I hope everyone had the chance to participate in that suggested competencies and do a self-evaluation. And like I mentioned in the email before, we're not going to ask you to share anything you're not comfortable with, but if we could go around and share a reflection on what you found notable in the reading, and then maybe share something surprising that you realized or reflected on from that self-evaluation. I think that would be a good place to start. And I did ask for our staff if they wanted to take part in the conversation to share some experiences based off that. I would appreciate hearing that too. I think we all would. So if anybody wants to start off. Or I can.
Great article, Jeff. I mean, it's a really great article, and I really responded to it as someone who's, you know, struggles with this. I mean, I feel like I try to put myself in, you know, like as an educator, I was horribly incompetent until I was slowly educated by some experience in the classroom, and it took a while. And like since then, like what I've learned since then, I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, I was so ignorant. I was like, why was I even allowed to be in the room? You know, it's just like, I feel like it is a growing process, and it's humbling, and you know, it's very just the article was just very, very familiar, because I feel like I've said some of those things before, like different parts of my understanding. And I feel like now when it's like I can see some of my own growth in the article, which makes me feel, you know, okay about myself in some ways. But I just am so clear that I, you know, have more work to do. So but I really liked the article. I felt like it was, because it was around education, it was relatable, you know, for what we're doing here.
And it occurs to me that I should probably go in a little detail, because we have some people from the community that are watching, and I want to make sure they understand what we're reading. We were reading an article from Brooks and Murray, Its title is I Know My Place, How Whiteness, White Culture, and White Educators Permeate and Shape Universities. And we took a self-evaluation about competencies for white allies and change agents. And the whole basis of the article is to talk about it's effectively it's three categories of people who kind of just avoid in general. People who believe that they are colorblind and yet stay silent or avoid. And then people who are more open and willing to take the challenge. But it's so that's something that we wanted to go deeper on, and I really appreciate the board for allowing it. So.
And Jeff, I'll just add, it's if anyone wants to see both of those things that you just mentioned, it is in the agenda that's posted on our website. So both of the competencies and the article are in the agenda.
And I'm not sure if I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bridget, if you had something more to say, but.
I mean, I'm willing to converse. It's not like a done, I don't have like a firm statement.
I think what I found interesting was just kind of going off what you were saying. As I was going through the self-evaluation, I think, the Jeff 10 years ago would have marked something probably a little more generous. And then the Jeff 5 years ago, getting into like administration and so on, probably would have been a little harsher. I think you would have seen this like regression instead of progression. And I think even in my current job, I think I'd actually would start going even a little further. And then the experiences last summer as a society, because I think I kind of take on more, and I'm just realizing 10 years ago, I didn't even know what I don't know. And I don't feel like that experience is ever getting better for me. And then I start really looking at, do I really challenge it? Do I allow these conversations to happen? Do I encourage these conversations to happen? Or do I let the happy talk distract me or let it take over and make it go away?
One of the pieces and those are good questions and thoughts. And that's interesting, Jeff, as you were saying that like what you would have answered, like you feel like you're getting worse, right?
More aware, I guess.
More aware too, yeah. As Bridget was talking, then I was thinking about like looking back at some of my notes as I had read through it. It made me think about that comparing it to this idea of like when I got on the board, right? When I first got on, right? Like I didn't like know anything really, right? And like as I got more information those first 6 months, I gained a lot of knowledge and I learned a lot more, but at the same time, I also felt like I knew even less because then I knew how much I didn't know. At the beginning, I didn't even know what I didn't know or whatnot. And I feel like that's a little bit, has been kind of my journey with like racism and race and all that different stuff is because I kind of started this process a little bit before we did as like a board. And I think as I'm learning more, one, I do know more and I'm more aware and I'm grateful for that. But then also, I was just oblivious to a lot of stuff, right? So now I'm aware, kind of what you're saying, Jeff, like there's so much more that I don't even know, right? So in some ways I feel like I have more knowledge, but in some ways I feel like I have less because I don't even know all the things, right? Especially like with implicit bias, right? There's probably things I say and do all the time that I have no clue about, right? And 10 years ago, I didn't even really probably think about it that much. And now I think about it, but I still probably am missing it because there's just, I don't know if this is making sense. There's just so much that I don't know, right? That I'm wanting to like learn. I want to do better, right? But there's probably just so much that I still don't.
So
go ahead, Nancy.
So what occurred to me is that it's a journey, and it isn't that you don't know, it's that it's the way the system is set up for indoctrination of values that are centric to the white culture. It's difficult to even realize initially that you're a part of the problem. And so it's this journey of awareness. And as I sort through and as I go into different, meeting different groups, being with different people, I keep on having to go through that again, because I didn't even realize that, oh, you have these tapes that have been loaded into your brain consciously or unconsciously. And it's a constant review kind of thing. You talk about the grading metric. I understand about being honest. And so, you know, you think that you get to levels of mastery, and then it's that humble recognition that it's a journey. And I don't think that anyone can be fully competent in every situation in this diverse world, but we can be empathetic and understand that we can be present with someone else and authentic in trying to share power and step back and listen. I remember you saying that several meetings ago, that what you find as you go through the journey is that instead of talking more and being out front, it's a matter of listening and letting others share in that decision making process and that learning process, and humbly embrace others into that space of the classroom, of your workplace.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not sure if it talks about this much on the reading, is in the talk I heard going along with it, is like the white fragility of these kind of conversations. How there's a lot of members in our own community that are willing to talk about it, but part of the being white, you know, the whiteness is there's a sensitivity to it. There's an awkwardness of not wanting to talk about it. And when you were talking about listening, it kind of cued my memory of this. And I think we've all gone through this transition when we're faced with somebody who wants to talk about this. We're not quite listening because we have this little barrier in our heads, like, I must convince them that I'm not racist. Mm-hmm. And I need to find a way of convincing this person I'm not, instead of literally listening to what's the concern, what's the issue, or even taking in maybe some like that microaggression that we put out unintentionally, instead of being so defensive or feeling like your whole world's shattering around you. Listening to what happened, what did you do, and how do you correct it?
Part of the growing, and I don't know, I just have a couple of metaphors in my mind from when part is when we think we touch button and say now we can keep moving forward, and then we realize that the button was way lower and lower and lower. Oh no, that's the button now. Now we can move forward. Well, no, actually it was a little bit down. And I think we've been touching a different button in the last few years, which, I don't know, it helped everybody to grow a little bit when you open your eyes and see another, start opening more shades of what our society is, and see how deep these problems can get. And but on the other hand, is very positive that a lot of people really wants to change and wants to understand. But it is very hard to start. I mean, you talk about white fragility. Yes, of course, because it's telling people like, people will think, I thought I was a good person. I'm sorry, I really thought I was a good person. I didn't know I was this bad. And that's not easy to like, as Bridget started saying, like, oh my God, I made so many little mistakes here and there. It's part of our growing. now we're growing as a society, but it's, I mean, as growing of our experiences in life, growing, I didn't expect to be an immigrant, and then it happened, and then I grow in different ways, and when you travel, you meet so many people, and then you're part of a different community that wasn't the one you were raised, or you were the people that was around, and then you start sharing with people with different experience, and you keep learning and learning, and you are into different faced with different realities and different perspectives from people who, I mean, from people who really have no idea about. That's something that is very American. You have no idea about what's going on outside your little bubble, because you don't have to care about it. Do you eat with forks and knife over there? Do you have electricity? That kind of questions. Like outside United States, people, do you dress like normal people? Do you have, do you wear clothes? That kind of questions. Like, who knows what people think about whatever goes outside the borders, and are they regular people at all? Like, you are just 5% of the world population. That's what you're thinking about, or less. Like, and the world, I know it's difficult, doesn't go around you. You are just part of it. You come with it, but it's not centric into that. And it's not the white male. It's not I mean, this is when you see the world population is so rich, and just realizing that you're just a little part of it, good or bad. Well, I think I went a little bit outside, but sorry about
It's
that.
okay. It's good.
But yes, it's try to understand each other, and it's not easy, because we all think that we're good people, and we all think we're doing our best, and hopefully everybody wants to do the best and be the best person ever, so that's a good place to start. But on the other hand, it's not easy to realize that you were doing something very bad, and you are like, no, really, I'm trying to be a good person, I am a good person, and then you're realizing, like, geez, I'm sorry, I thought I was.
Does anybody else have some observations or something to share?
Can I just say one more thing before, unless whatever.
Go ahead.
I one more idea. So, when I was reading this, I was thinking about it, and actually it was later when I was doing the survey, and it was talking about, like, what do I know, and what do I know about other people's experiences, right? And, like, the more you ask yourself that question, the more you go, well, I know something, but I haven't walked in those shoes. I can be empathetic and really try to understand that experience. But I think as educators and as people in education, we have this other layer of responsibility that's so important. And I grew up in public school in southeastern Midwestern Wisconsin, when it was like almost radical. Like, they were like turning us all into little socialists, and we were going home to I was going home to my, blue collar, like conservative family. And I was like, practically had a red flag. I mean, I was like they were very like, school was like a liberalizing, socializing place, which I'm very grateful for to this day. But anyway, I went through this kind of very liberal childhood education. I went through California schools from high school to college to master's degree, got my teaching credential here in California, and I took classes that were, within the requirements, and I, had had multicultural classes, and I was like super interested in, history. And so I was just this year I've noticed in media, like I'm thinking, why am I learning about American history, right? Historical events in American history on Lovecraft Country or on Watchmen, right? Like, why am I listening? And it's because, oh, that's Black history. And we never got to that, you know? And it's just like, oh my God, you know, so I'm really like, I'm really horrified by that, you know, like just, so I've been, reading and doing some other stuff, but it's just like, we really, I think that things are shifting and changing, and I'm really interested in our new Secretary of Education and, some changes that might come out of there. But I just think there's been an awakening, and I just hope it continues. And I just, it's a clarion call for sure. But that's embarrassing that I would be learning about these. I never, like, I think I read about Black Wall Street in in a New York Times article within the last year, right? Like, how did I not ever, and that's on me, but it's also like this whole system that we're in and that we're on the board of education for. It's just not acceptable.
So I want to end on a hopeful note. All of this was about teacher education and building capacity. So this afternoon, it was like kind of competing things. The County Office of Education is, I'm in a cohort group engaged with educators around ethnic studies. Just fabulous, 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 and thinking outside of the box. So teachers are engaging in that work. And then there's the equity network initiative that the county office is doing. And so I was a part of that. Unfortunately, the meetings kind of overlap. So I want the public to know that there is a big initiative, not only within our district, but also supports out through the county to help build those competencies that are not yet fully integrated into the teacher induction process or the life process yet. But it's a lifelong journey. So I think we have a lot of good support here, and I'm thankful that for this particular board, I've been waiting for you to find that group of compassionate leaders who want to do the work. It's easy to do a plan. It's hard to do the work to get to the plan that is going to have meaning and context. So I thank you all.
And as we go forward, because one of my frustrations in education is, the standard achievement gap. We've been tackling that as a profession for, since I've been an educator, and we don't seem to ever get closer. And I think we are at a tipping point where maybe we can start being open to some ideas. Maybe education, or as institutions, we're not as relevant to some of our population. And how do we make, it's kind of like similar to what some of the conversations we're having, is how do we make that education relevant? How do we make schools more approachable? Why are some of our leaders, because I think we have a lot more leaders in the community, why aren't they speaking out? Or maybe we're not listening, or missed opportunities. Because I think in my experience on the board, I know I've brought this up a couple times recently, is just the community mistake of when we were talking about what the community thought we were talking about redistricting, some of the conversations that came up. could have challenged it more. More difficult conversations to the community that just said some awful things about other members of our community.
I wanted to share a little bit.
Over way, but said it in a very polite way.
Yeah. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience in general, a little bit further back, well, in the district. I have noticed that, well, not just since I started trying to find more leadership at the school, at the little school board over there. It's not the district. I think it was, I forgot the name, but it's not a PTA, it's a different thing. Well, I know it has a particular name, sorry. That, you know, everybody in leadership looked certain way, spoke certain way. And they look like they have good intentions, but they didn't give the opportunity, as I felt, to other people to talk and raise their voice. So even as I try and I went for it and went to the board and was part of it, I always ask, like, why, if most of the school, 70% of the school looks in certain way, the leadership does not look like that? And why, if we, I mean, I can see the way how many parents and part of the community try to speak up and see what's going on. They are not, they don't feel comfortable. And I understand why, because a lot of time I was, you know, not feel comfortable about it. Like I'm bothering or stop talking, or why are you talking, or like I was asked the other week, why is this person here? That happened all the time. And I don't know exactly how many people actually try to do it, or they don't realize, or they actually bother if you know, many of the parents are, you know, trying to talk or ask. And a lot of them are not that comfortable, sometimes even to talk to the teacher or ask the teacher, or because then, you know, you see that a lot of the people who is trying to take care of things and be leaders, they get it and they form the little clicking group, and these are the people who we're gonna click and we're gonna be friends and we're gonna talk, and then we complain that not everybody is as engaged, and they don't want to be part because they don't care like we care. They don't have the same expectations that we do. We are the ones who are gonna be who care about education. They don't even care about the education of their kids. Well, you're not being that nice, you know, that kind with these other people. I, you know, depending of the day, how I felt, I just stay there, just like, well, I have the right to be here, so I'm gonna be, and that's it, live with it. On other days, I was just discouraged about that. Like, you know, I'm not in the mood to fight this today. But that was like day by day. But I saw a lot of parents who weren't speaking English very well, who were afraid to, you know, stand up for themselves or stand up to the teacher, talk about that. And then we have, you know, like you try to do things for the community, or try to find extra help for people who is not speaking up, or who is not doing, you know, who apparently they don't care about education. So why we need to do that about them? Well, let's do this thing. Let's open the parent training to all the languages. Let's have parent education. And then you get it, but why? If they don't care, they never come. They are never here. They don't feel welcome. So and that's not just the group that spoke Spanish. That I saw, you know, parents that were arriving from different countries or spoke Chinese, or that they just felt overwhelmed by it. And that was a parent participation school. So you have a very strong group of people who wants to do stuff and take over the stuff and do stuff. And then the leadership is, just look like one way, spoke one way. And, even as a board member or as the president of the board member, I was widely ignored. And like, again, okay, what? Let's finish saying that. Like, I don't know what to tell you if it's, I don't know if it's, I don't think any of those were bad people. It just happened. And it's a part about how we can stand a hand, how we can reach to them, how we can tell to everybody in our community, to fill up that gap, to fill the gap, like, come on, let's pull you in. What's the issue? How can we help? Don't be afraid. Just tell us. Some things we can help. Some other things maybe we can contact with somebody else who can help. Maybe just talking about it will help. So there are, it's a very complex situation, and every group will have different issues, different things that they're living through. That is not always the same. It's not, a cookie cut thing for everybody. Not everybody will have the same shape of problem or the same shape of answer to what the problems are. We do need to try to make better, to communicate and to make everybody feel welcome to come and talk and tell us what is the issue, how can we help. Many of those issues we do have the answer and we can help. And as Nancy was saying the other week, how can we make our district or our schools to be the most desirable district and schools in the Bay Area? Well, we do need to fill that gap. We cannot let people just, fall through the gap and be forgotten. So that the way is, helping them communication, community outreach, community education, transport maybe for many. That's, one of the lists that I was giving to Mike. Maybe we can think about transport. Maybe we can think about the SMS rescheduling, like why, if, not just English learners, but why if this kid has an issue and it's not, like he needs repairing math, then we don't have time to give him arts or elective. But the CMS is a very nice schedule, so it gives the opportunity to those kids to also have arts. Arts are important in life. And the electives are there for a reason. It's the whole child, and so that might be a way to help the kid, to have a round education and make them feel better to move forward, or the families, or if the issue is, as we saw this week with the bringing, that there were some families that needed to have the food taken to their house, because even though we as a district and all the other schools are doing an awesome job about giving food to people who need it, then, there are so many situations, and somehow SMS is, it's not a Title I, it didn't have the net to catch all those people who was falling through the little gaps. Then what do we do? And actually the teachers are, it started with the parents, now the teachers are answering the call and are helping and are driving foods. But, there are so many reasons. Like there are some families who got their dad got trapped far away in a job. He needed desperately a job, so he needed to go far away. So he's not there during the weekend, and the mom doesn't want the kids to walk 1 hour every day for lunch. So, and she doesn't have transportation. How is she going to bring all these boxers to her house? They just like, well, we cannot pay for the food, and maybe we eat, maybe we don't. There's so many things. So, or somebody is sick, or grandma has cancer, or like for whatever reason there is, there are all these families who were not getting the free lunch and they really needed it. But if nobody knows about this, how can we help? How can we fill up those gaps? So, one of the big part is understanding this, understand that everybody's coming from a different idea, different situation. And culturally, I mean, for example, that little thing that is one of the things that, make people like, oh, I'm not welcome here. I am used that if I get to a room, I say hello to everybody. And if I'm the one entering, or if somebody enter to a room, they should look at you and say hello, even if they hate you. But I mean, that's the decent, normal, basic human thing. And I was raised like that. And, it's very shocking. Apparently, it's not like that over here. You get to a room and people feel like they don't need to answer to the hello. Nobody say hello. And that's a thing, like, you can make people feel welcome from different cultures. Just looking at their eyes and say hello. I mean, I don't know if maybe we do have some sort of Asperger epidemic in the whole district, that people don't connect and look at your eyes and can say hello. But that's like a little thing that will get you very far with. Actually, I noticed that with every culture. I say that to people from different colors and cultures, and everybody answer very well and look at you back and say hello. And that's a tiny little thing that a big part of the people that I've been living and sharing at school don't get. Hello. And look the other way, or, it's not a big hello, or going to the hallway and feeling like you just, if you're in the hallway, you don't need to say hello to everybody. But if and you have been sharing time with this person in the classroom, a little gesture, that goes a long way. That means like, oh, that person doesn't hate me. That person doesn't have anything against me. So next time I can ask or give or do something. I mean, this is a person that understand that I'm alive and I'm a human. I'm not a dog walking down the street. And that just apparently it's not natural. So I just keep thinking like, maybe, I don't know, a lot of people say that in the area because everybody's a genius, has a little bit of Asperger, so that's why they don't share as humans.
Well, it might be a little bit of American culture too. So that might be something we need to be aware of as well, to intervene on in our own local communities. That's a good point.
Jeff, if it's okay, I think Tasha and Jeremy and maybe Rob wanted to add something too.
Okay, so sorry about that. Sorry about
Oh, that's okay. If you're not done.
Good.
Wrapping many years of all of this. But I mean, I'm glad that we're doing better, and I'm glad that we all want to work towards being better and as a district and bring people and be aware of different cultures. So I'll stop.
So Tasha, Jeremy, did you have something to share as well, or Rob?
Well, I guess I'll just chime in and build upon what Isabel was speaking to. There's something to be said about human decency. And sometimes we fall short of the first step. I heard many of you talk about I'm not a good or I'm a bad person. Racism, as I think you spoke to, Jeff, is not about whether I'm good or bad. It's about acknowledging and owning my behavior when I'm called upon it. And so I think that's the critical piece. None of us, including those of us who may be from diverse groups, know everything. Because I think Isabel talked about it, because we all live in our own bubble to some degree. But the problem is not owning your behavior and not owning behavior when it's right in front of you. I think the other big thing I heard here, and I would say it's a misbelief or misnomer, is that the behaviors and the things that we've been seeing over the last few months or 6 months is not new behavior. It has not changed, unfortunately, from my view or my lens in the last years that I've been in existence. I see the microaggressions, I see the macro, I see it in our policies within the educational system, I see it in our federal government, I see it in our state systems. It's there, it's very deep as a culture in this society. And it was built on those negative principles. And so to overcome them means you have to do that work personally, and you have to do that work at home. So sometimes we as educators, and I think Bridget spoke to this, is that we have a greater responsibility as educators to have those conversations and develop the skills so that I can be a voice in the classroom. I can be a voice in the staff lounge. I can be a voice in the boardroom, and I'm willing to take the risk to stand up when it may make me uncomfortable. So I would just say, I think everyone on the screen has that desire, and that's important. I think all of you are allies, so don't beat yourselves up too hard. But it's really about acknowledging, and people don't like to acknowledge when they're wrong, whether it's about race or anything else. But when it comes to race, it's really hard, especially when we began to use words such as white supremacy or privilege or any of that. We don't want to own that behavior. So I don't think any of us can shake our fingers too much, but we can shake our fingers at ourselves. And so I think that's kind of the lens I'd love us to work from. And I think as a board, it's very difficult because you have people coming from all angles with their own agendas. And so being able to say no when it's going to be uncomfortable, but being able to say yes when that will also be uncomfortable, because someone's always going to be unhappy. So I just think if we can always keep our lens on and be willing to make decisions that are in the best interest of all of the community that we serve, I think we'll be on the right track, because it's a journey, as Nancy spoke to. It's a lifelong journey, and I'm gonna do my part each step of the way. So I think that's really more what resonates with me and the work that we do and we have to do, and why I keep doing this work, because if my interaction makes a difference for one person, then it was worth it.
Thank you.
I can chime in a little bit. Jeff, I appreciated the article, and I think it's a little bit of what Tasha was just touching on is, I've been in government and education my entire career. And so, I think it was a great vehicle for me to really take a look at myself again and how I fit into this context. So I had read the article, did the self-survey, and then reread the article again. And a lot of things are kind of sinking in. And so you mentioned, like, what is something surprising from the tool? And so, I was rated higher on the knowledge about race and racism. I've had a lot of equity work in my career, in both Cupertino and Oak Grove. And so, I have that awareness, but then I was shocked to say the next section was very low for me. Use a race lens to notify and respond effectively to interpersonal, dynamics. And that was shocking or surprising to me, because I tend to be one of action, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you've seen it even in my behavior as a staffer, like it's about action. But yet when it comes to, I can recognize it, but my action, when it comes to race in that regard, I become all of a sudden very thoughtful. Let me think about this. Let me process this. And so I think that was something that kind of really came out for me, especially in the position that I'm in, on wanting to make sure that, meeting the individual needs. And I think the big thing that's striking me, and I can't help but overlay the pandemic, is that the pandemic is affecting every individual differently depending on the circumstances of what they've come from. And so the key for me is really that how does the individual fit within the system, right? Because we have policies and rules and laws in a way that are supposed to be designed to keep everything in check, for lack of a better term, but unfortunately it is applied unequally in different ways. And so I think that's just something that I'm kind of struggling, especially being, a father, a Asian American, an educator, and a cabinet member. Like I'm trying to make meaning about that. So I think the ability for me then to process and act when it comes to, of being an effective advocate for equity, I think is something that I'm gonna, and that sounds, see, I'm processing again. So I will, I have to take action in that regard. So I need to be bolder in that regard. So, because I do, we've had several great conversations, even at the staff level, about privilege and race. And so it's just, I've been unpacking a lot about just coming as an Asian American and the legacy from, I shared this with staff before, but just even, my parents were internment, and to be where I'm sitting today, right? So I'm aware of that privilege and a little bit of guilt too. Like, what do I do, with this gift that I've been given? So those are my thoughts at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that want to add to that? Rob, did you have anything to say, or?
I don't have anything else to add to it. I enjoyed the reading and just listening to the conversation. So thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
I think my comment would be, and I'll try to keep it short, because my thoughts are actually long, is that it's, as a white male, it's good. Like, I'm kind of intentionally going last because it's pretty often that I'll go first, and it's probably not an accident that there's a white male as a superintendent. Like, the system probably caused that somehow and gave me some privilege to be there. And yet, when I think back at my upbringing, and this is the part that it's complex, we were never raised with the concept of that we were white. And then people will say, well, yeah, white people aren't aware of their whiteness. We were actually raised with the idea that we were Irish Catholic and we were other because the dominant culture was WASP. And we were very clear that we weren't that. And so it's interesting. It wasn't until like after college that I started being put into the category of white. And I first was very uncomfortable because I thought, well, that's stripping me of my identity. And then I realized, oh, okay. Then I started learning about the privilege because of how I was perceived, not how I was necessarily seeing myself, but how others were seeing me. So that just began a journey where I have to listen. And so that's why I'm going to stop talking now, because I think that's the most important thing for me, is just to listen and to understand the privilege that I have and the privilege that's gotten me to where I am, based on a construct that wasn't part of my initial upbringing, which is interesting. But it was there. I realized it was there, but it wasn't how we were taught. So.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the time and your thoughts. I hope I did this some justice, and I don't think it's the end of the conversation either, but.
Before you conclude, can I actually have a question from the reading. I know we're like kind of
Sure.
late. So, I gotta go back to I'm not on the right page. Shoot, sorry. So just as I was reading it, I'm in the wrong thing. Shoot. It's not letting me, oh, there we go. I was in my, so at the end, there was a phrase, or not a phrase, but just, so it was on the very end of page 170. And they're just saying that we believe that any movement toward racial justice must include open discussion and analysis of whiteness, right racism, white privilege, and white supremacy. And white racism, that's not like a term that I had heard before, and I don't understand. And I probably should now, I'm like, oh, I should have Googled it, but I did not. So I'm curious if someone has, like, what does the white racism mean, or what does someone think that means? Because I didn't understand that.
Well, unfortunately, the talk, I don't know if we went to that specific. I mean, I can kind of speak to what I think white racism could be like a specific term in the fact that, so I'm gonna share something that is a little, I don't know, a little open, I guess, and I hope no one carries away any bad feelings. when I was in the Marines, went overseas, and we had open squad bays. And I remember the first sergeant that was assigning me to the open squad bay, because they're all little beds. He saw that I was from California, so he specifically positioned me in the middle. And what we had is, you know, in the military is very heavy in social economic capacities, right? On one hand, we had just a large population of Black Marines. On the other hand, we had a large population of white Marines. The white Marines had, it was like a deep South white.
Yeah.
And they were actually openly displaying Confederate flags. And so for me, I was considered Californian because that was new to me. That was weird, strange. And I think the education that I had up to that point, I knew what the Confederate flag meant, but I also felt, I think there was a certain protection, and there was a certain education went along with that, a little complication, a little redefining of whitewashing history. And it became sort of like just that culture instead of a symbol for what it is. And, you know, the 18-year-old self, me, it's a lot to take in, right? And I couldn't really even process that. And going back, like the 50-year-old self looks back at that thinking, oh, there's so much I could have done, right? But the institution in itself also kind of protected me, where I could kind of walk away like, okay, well, you know, and I'm safe, right? Because it's a certain racism. And I think, does that make my act any less racist? That I didn't do anything about that? And I thought that was sort of a normal, you know, and I maybe it's a little complicated. I'm still kind of processing that too. And these are experiences that I'm starting to wash over me, and starting to just recall and pull back and start thinking there's all these opportunities that I could have done something and taken on more and put myself in really uncomfortable, maybe even like career ending, you know, stands. Because for me to make a big deal out of that, the whole institution protected them to allow them to do that. And I would have, you know, it's crazy. So white racism is kind of specific, where you can be overtly, covertly, or oblivious, if that makes sense. And they're all racist. And if anybody has anything different to say, I'd love your perspective on that. But
sometimes I've seen the nexus between white racism and white supremacy. But I think you're talking about the subtleties in there is important. You know, there is an extreme component, and then there's the implicit bias and going along with the flow. So yeah, sometimes you're not even aware of it, and sometimes you know, and you just kind of go along to get along within your culture, not for the betterment of the rest. There's a lot of rails that want to keep you in that line.
And I think that sometimes the danger as educators or administrators, or even our position, where we, you know, see these conversations or these threats, no little, I mean, just these threats, these like, you know, these a lot of the PDs I've been going to, they call them microaggressions. It's a new term for me that I keep hearing, you know, and do we let them go because we're in that position just to let them go because we can kind of operate in that and just ignore it? Or do we start joining the voices to call them out and having those uncomfortable conversations? not to be, again, I mean, just kind of like restating what we said before, not to attack, but just kind of bring up the conversation and hopefully open awareness. Because I don't want to, like, I think the intention of that microaggressions is to open up the fact that most of the people that commit those aggressions are unaware, you know, and oblivious, and they need to be made aware because we're protected.
Well, I think that's kind of where I was talking about earlier. Like, I probably miss most of the microaggressions that exist around me, right? And that's where the piece of like, I want to do more, but I'm lacking in a lot of knowledge, right? Like, I'm probably not aware of, right? So I guess that's my next step is like, how do I learn these different microaggressions, right? How do I learn?
Yeah, I mean,
how do I learn more of it to, right? To be.
I mean, we miss it because we just don't know. We don't hear it because we're protected that way, right?
Yeah.
And we need to be. That's why we need to start listening to the people that want to make us more aware. Because actually, it was interesting when I was in this PD, they broke us down into these little breakout groups, and I was my breakout group. I was the only white person in that breakout group. And even when we were going around talking about instances of these microaggressions happening, the people were still kind of, my little learning community here, they were still kind of talking around the topic. They were being, I really definitely got a sense that they were all trying to be very sensitive to my feelings. And it was actually kind of unnerving. I realized I felt like they were just protecting me. And that's why I was trying to encourage them. No, let me know. Bring it up. But, it's just experience. Like I said, I think I'm going with what Tasha was saying. The 50-year-old Jeff is a much better person than the 18-year-old Jeff was. And that comes from experience and from awareness, from learning, being open to going back and reflecting on my past self and remembering these instances that I could have taken action and making a commitment to go forward different, and still not perfect. Anyway, thank you. I hope, like I said, I hope I did this topic justice, and hope I didn't overshare on myself and change people's perspective of myself. But I'll hand it back over to Michelle. Thank you.
Jeff, and thank you for everyone. And I think, like always, right, even though we gave it more time than our short equity reflections, right, we still, right, we just touched the, tip of the iceberg again. Before we, I was hoping that maybe it was something that we could kind of talk about what our next steps we want to do with equity, but I don't think we have time tonight. So we will do that another time. But I do want to, we didn't have public comment on this item yet. And so I want to open it up if there is any one from the public who wishes to speak on this item. Please use the raise hand feature now. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. And I can't remember if I said thank you, Jeff, at the end when you turned it back to me. Thank you. Thank you for taking this on and sharing this with us. And I know it's conversations we'll continue to have. And it kind of feels like each time we have these, right, we kind of get a little bit deeper, right? We're moving along that path, right? And that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let me switch back to agenda. All right, so we're on to future meetings. So I just want to say, so additional staff, you're totally welcome to stay, but we're going to have a little bit of discussion about future meeting stuff. So you're of course welcome to stay, but don't feel like you need to stay for the next few minutes as we have that discussion. And if you leave, thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, so we're on to the future meetings. And so we just wanted to have a quick discussion hopefully it made sense. And if people need, like, I think I have miscommunicated a little bit. So there's kind of two ideas, right? There's study session topics and then specifically governance development topics, which both are important, are both things that we're doing. But what I'm wanting tonight is for you guys to, we'll just do a couple minutes, kind of share what you guys might feel like would be kind of on the top of your list, like your one or two governance development specifically, so we can plan in February, but then we can also use that to like plan our other ones for this spring. So I'd resent out what Greg had sent us last week. Because I feel like a lot of that summary that he gave us could be pieces that could be used as governance development. But also if there's we don't have to pull just from that, right? That just is a resource. So if anybody has anything specific that they feel like, one, if you need more clarification or not understanding, please let me know. Or if we are on the same page there, then what would be some topics, or not topics, but like a topic we would like.
So what I would like to do, I noticed that Greg noticed that there was a tension about practices, beliefs, and that people might want to do it differently. Whenever a new board gets together, we need to agree about how we're basically going to perform and do things, and that and we haven't done that. So I mean, going through the governance handbook and codifying what it is around what it is that we want to do and what we are going to agree to. The past is a guide. It's not a given.
So yeah, as I was looking at that, I felt like kind of two of his connected it. One was the piece of that, I hate to use the word tension, feels negative, but that tension of like past and like moving forward, new procedures. And the other one he had about, which I think they're connected, the re-examine the tools and basic tenets of operation we use and why we use them. So that's kind of what you're thinking too, right, Nancy? So essentially those two kind of bullets he had would kind of be blended together. That was one of the ones that I was looking at too. Is there others, or do people feel like that is kind of a good general focus for our February meeting?
I was wondering if there might be one around, we sort of did something similar. It was like very abbreviated with like a quiz or something on our, not personality types, but there's something called Strength Finders. It talks about, it's actually called Nonviolent Communication. And I don't know if you read it or seen it, but it sounds a little bit like the premise for IBB, where you're looking for trying to understand other people's perspectives and where they're coming from. And even though it's not governance handbook related, I think it's team related, and like how to communicate with one another and where people are coming from. And it's not a thing like Nicole Anderson does, like what's your why? And it's not like what exact quadrant are you in? I think it talks about like I think some companies have used it, like Coburn's company used it recently, and he said it really brought like their team together, like their executive team, and to be more effective together, to work together. And even though we're doing things that are very different, I feel like it gives people a perspective of where they're coming from. And if that's what some people are, missing from our conversations, they're feeling like, oh, is Bridget being performative? I don't know where Bridget's coming from. Maybe she's feeling performative tonight or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if we all knew where each other were coming from, we would be a more effective team.
We've used different tools in the past. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with the tool that you're talking about.
Or any tool, I mean, you could look at that one, but
Oh, I'm trying to think of Jeff. Do you remember when we had a facilitator come in who did that kind of where you're coming from or understanding how you're expressing yourself, thinking tool, and I can't remember her name. Do you remember, Jeff?
That was a while ago, right?
Yeah, Ben would know.
Yeah.
But she was a good facilitator with that particular topic, and we worked a little bit on the governance handbook as well. It was like a duality of experience. So maybe Mike can touch base with Ben to see what we used on that as well. And using a tool, I don't have a problem with using any particular tool. It needs to be administered by somebody who understands that tool and how to take the conversation forward with that. But I'm certainly open to gaining that insight because it really does help.
Well, I'll just send you a thing of the tool and I'll send you a link right now.
That'd be great. Yeah, I was trying to find it online. I couldn't.
It's by Gallup, and so
I think I saw that.
Yeah, Gallup, and it's like 34 strengths, and like you could just go through and it gives you like 2 minutes or a few seconds to answer a question, and then you just go to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because like you know, and it gives you these things where it's like, hey, you know, this person, like this is a real strength for this person. Oh, and you know, when you talk to this person, this is kind of their area of focus.
Mining. Mining. Anyway, you can send it to us.
Strengths. I think it's this one. I'll just double check.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Gallup Strengths Finder. Yeah. Okay. Send me what you have so we make sure we have the same one.
All right. Is there anything else somebody wants to add for other things you feel like are important for us to touch on, or does it just kind of hit the most important things we think? We're good?
And that's separate of the equity talk that we commit to have. I mean, this.
Yeah. Yes. This is a part of our board development.
Governance development.
Yeah, where we just talk about how we're functioning as a group. We're not doing the business of governance or anything about the district. It's how we are forming as a team.
Yeah. So like similar to what we did last week, right? Last week was governance development, right? So that idea of like, you know, I kind of like what Greg said, right? That idea of like, he's like, he goes in with boards that are a mess and then boards that are like doing well who want to be refined, right? So it's like our refining process. Okay. All right. I think this is good. And then we will at future time, I mean, I think we'll keep doing our short equity reflections at future time. I think we can talk more. I think we need to have more equity discussion. And then we'll also have a chance to talk about study sessions. And I know, so Mike, maybe tomorrow in your weekend report, whatever you call it, when you send out, maybe you could send out that study session list. I know a few people have sent Mike some stuff recently. Jesus took, we kind of created one last year. So Jesus took that list and has just been adding people's on. So Mike, would that work if you send that out tomorrow?
Yeah, yes.
Everyone kind of look over. So that's changing gears, right? That's the study session. So not our governance development, but the study sessions where we kind of will dive into, you know, more topics related to education.
I did, well, talking about these little things, maybe about learning for equity. We did got a particular class at college. They gave to, well, everybody in the staff and teachers how to, I mean, with even some preachers came, a very powerful speakers telling us about how to be anti-racist, actively anti-racist all the time, and how to spot microaggressions, how to, and they were very, very good and powerful, but I don't know, we'll have to research if there is anything out there that we
Yes,
can.
if you have a great resource, then I would say send that on to Mike and Jesus, and we can, Mike and
Put that for
the
consideration.
equity stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are we?
Right. And another thing is just to circle back on the equity plan with Nicole and see where we're at on that. Because I feel like I'm dangling Bridget from not having closure of this tool and the thing that we spent so much time on. I don't know.
From your equity network, is that what you're talking about?
Right, where
we came up, we put that plan together and we reviewed it as a board last year. And then it just kind of like, we said like, hey, here's some issues that we think are top of mind. And then it just kind of stopped. And so, I mean, it didn't stop, but it like changed, right? And then the pandemic hit and stuff. And so it just kind of is on pause. So I think as long, hopefully the people who are meeting are still, looking at that, but it is a good tool. I think for me, the big takeaway was, for being a more effective board member, like I would like to have a common language for when we go out to schools and look at things. Like I was telling Mike and Michelle that doing a site tour of someone else's campus, but like through the equity lens, like we did up at that high school, Nancy.
Equity walk.
What?
The equity walk.
The equity walk, because I feel like that was a way, that was the most, it was like a hands-on learning experience about equity, like in terms of like space and practice. And it gave you like very clear ways of like not talking in the room and, like kind of protocols about visiting. It was like very kind of school board member friendly, I guess, of how to talk about things and notice things without making people uncomfortable in the room. And then
so are you suggesting that could be a board or governance team development?
Well, I think that'd be more study session.
More study session.
Well, I was thinking like it might be a study session because we'd be learning together, but I feel like it could also be something where we could take it forward from there, because then like when I go to then we would kind of have a common language of like when we go to like, let's say, if Isabel and I reported back from what we saw at the SLGs, like we would have a common language in how we would discuss it, right? Or we might discuss ahead of time things that we would look for based on the equity lens that we were talking about. We go in, we look, we come out, we talk, and we kind of report back like what we noticed. And it's not evaluative, but it's just a language,
So I think we're going to discuss the different things that we're going to include on the agenda at the next meeting. Is that right, Michelle?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, either February 4th or February 11th. So that would be like something we would discuss then. Yeah. Okay. So our next meeting, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your input. And our next meeting is Thursday, February 4th at 7 p.m. That is a regular board meeting. And then it's not on the agenda, but just a reminder, February 11th is a special meeting, and that will be a governance development meeting. And with that, I adjourn at 10:30.